Hello, everyone. Today, I want to tell you a story about myself and how I learned the power of positive thinking. This story is very important because it changed my life, and I believe it can help you too. A few years ago, when I started learning English, I was very excited. I wanted to speak fluently, understand movies, and talk to people from different countries. But soon, I realized that learning a new language was not easy. English had so many new words, difficult grammar rules, and different pronunciations. Sometimes I could not understand what people were saying, and when I tried to speak, my sentences were not correct. At first, I thought, it's okay, I just need to practice. But as time passed, I kept making mistakes. When I spoke, people sometimes did not understand me. I felt embarrassed and nervous. I started thinking, maybe I am not smart enough. Maybe English is too difficult for me. Day by day, my negative thoughts grew stronger. I started avoiding speaking in English because I was afraid of making mistakes. Whenever I heard someone speak fluently, I thought, I will never be like them. My confidence became weaker, and I felt unmotivated. Instead of enjoying learning, I started feeling stressed. I told myself, no matter how much I try, I will never speak English well. Because of this, I did not practice much, and my progress became slower. I felt stuck, like I was not moving forward. I didn't realize it at that time, but my biggest problem was not my mistakes. It was not my pronunciation or my grammar. The real problem was my negative thinking. I was telling myself, I can't do this. And because of that, I was not improving. Little did I know that a small change in my thoughts could completely transform my learning journey. And that's exactly what happened. But before I tell you how everything changed, let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like this? Have you ever thought, English is too difficult for me? If yes, then this story is for you. Keep listening, because what happened next might help you in your own journey. When I first started speaking English, I was very excited. I wanted to talk with confidence, have conversations, and express my thoughts clearly. But reality was very different from my expectations. Every time I tried to speak, I made mistakes. Sometimes I used the wrong words. Sometimes my grammar was incorrect, and sometimes I could not find the right words at all. When I spoke, people would look at me with confused faces. They didn't understand what I was trying to say. This made me feel embarrassed. I thought, why am I making so many mistakes? Maybe I am not good at learning languages. One day I went to a coffee shop and tried to order in English. I wanted to say, "Can I have a cup of coffee, please?" But instead, I said something like, "I have coffee, please?" The cashier looked at me, confused. She didn't understand me at first. I repeated myself, but I still wasn't sure if I was saying it correctly. Finally, she understood and gave me my coffee, but I felt terrible. I walked out of the shop thinking, that was so embarrassing. Why can't I speak properly? This kind of situation happened again and again. Every time I made a mistake, I felt worse about myself. I started believing that maybe I was not smart enough to learn English. I compared myself to other people who spoke fluently, and I thought, they are so good at English. But me, I will never be like them. Because of these negative thoughts, I started avoiding speaking in English. When I met new people, I wanted to talk, but I was afraid of making mistakes. So, I stayed silent. If someone spoke to me in English, I answered with very short sentences or just nodded. In my English class, my teacher would ask a question, and I knew the answer, but I was too scared to speak. What if I say it wrong? I thought. So I stayed quiet. The teacher moved on to another student, and I felt like I had missed another opportunity to practice. At home, I told myself, maybe I should stop trying. English is too hard for me. Because of this, I stopped practicing. I avoided listening exercises. I stopped reading English books, and I didn't try to speak anymore. I thought, if I don't try, I won't make mistakes, and I won't feel embarrassed. But in reality, this was the worst decision. Since I stopped practicing, my English did not improve. Weeks passed, then months, but I was still at the same level. I was stuck. My fear of mistakes had stopped me from growing. The more I avoided speaking, the harder it became to speak. And the harder it became, the more I wanted to give up. I felt frustrated. I wanted to be better, but I didn't believe in myself. I thought, maybe English is not for me. But deep inside, I still had a small hope. A small voice inside me said, maybe there is another way. Maybe I can still improve. And that's when something happened that changed everything. One day, something happened that completely changed the way I thought about learning English. It was a normal day in my English class, and as usual, I was sitting quietly, afraid to speak. My teacher, Mr. John, was explaining a lesson about pronunciation. He looked around the classroom and suddenly asked me a question. I froze. My heart started beating fast. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for my answer. I wanted to speak, but my mind was blank. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, I would say something wrong, and everyone would laugh. So I just shook my head and said, I don't know. Mr. John smiled. He didn't get angry or move on to another student. Instead, he said, it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn. I had heard this before, but for some reason, this time, his words felt different. Maybe it was the way he said it, or maybe I was just tired of feeling stuck. I looked at him, and he continued, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try. After class, Mr. John called me to his desk. He said, I've noticed that you don't speak much in class. Do you feel nervous about speaking English? I nodded. Yes, I'm afraid of making mistakes, I admitted. He smiled again and said something that changed everything for me. The problem is not your English. The problem is your thinking. You keep telling yourself that you are not good enough. But what if you changed your thoughts? What if instead of saying, I can't, you say, I can? I had never thought about this before. Could changing my thoughts really make a difference? Mr. John continued, I want you to try something. Every time you feel nervous, say to yourself, I can learn English. I am improving every day. Even if you don't believe it yet, just say it. Your mind listens to your words. He also gave me a small challenge. Practice English every day for just 5 minutes. But there's one rule. You must do it with a smile and believe that you are getting better. At first, I thought this idea was strange. Could just thinking positively really change my learning? But I had nothing to lose, so I decided to try. That night I stood in front of the mirror and said, I can learn English. I am improving every day. It felt silly at first, but I kept repeating it. The next morning, I did the same thing. I also started practicing English for a few minutes every day, just like Mr. John suggested. But this time, I did it differently. Instead of thinking, I will make mistakes, I told myself, every mistake is a step forward. One day, I was walking in the park when I saw a tourist looking at a map. He seemed lost. Normally, I would avoid talking, but I remembered my new mindset. I can do this, I whispered to myself. I walked up to him and said, "Do you need help?" My pronunciation wasn't perfect, and I made a few mistakes, but guess what? He understood me. We had a short conversation, and I helped him find his way. After that moment, something inside me changed. I felt a small spark of confidence. It wasn't about speaking perfectly. It was about trying, learning, and improving. I realized that my negative thoughts had been my biggest obstacle. The more I believed in myself, the more I improved. And that was just the beginning of my journey toward confidence and success in English. After my conversation with Mr. John, I decided to take his advice seriously. I told myself, what if this really works? What if my thoughts are the reason I am not improving? So, I made a simple rule. Every day, no matter what, I would practice English for a few minutes. But there was one condition. I had to do it with a positive attitude. At first, it wasn't easy. I was so used to thinking negatively that my mind automatically said, "This is too hard," or "You will never improve." But whenever I had those thoughts, I stopped myself and replaced them with new ones. I am learning something new every day. Mistakes are my teachers. English is getting easier for me. I can do this. I wrote these sentences on a piece of paper and stuck it on my wall. Every morning, I looked at them and repeated them out loud. It felt strange in the beginning, but after a few days, something changed. I started believing my own words. I started practicing English with small activities. I didn't force myself to study for hours. Instead, I focused on simple, fun things. I stood in front of the mirror and spoke to myself in English. I described my day, my feelings, or even what I ate for breakfast. At first, I felt silly, but after a few days, I realized something. I was speaking more easily. I started listening to English podcasts and watching simple English videos. Before, I would get frustrated when I didn't understand everything. But now I told myself, it's okay if I don't understand every word. The more I listen, the more I will learn. I kept a small notebook where I wrote a few sentences in English every day. They didn't have to be perfect. I just wrote whatever came to my mind. After some time, I noticed that I was making fewer mistakes. This was the hardest part for me. I was still afraid of talking to people. But I remembered what Mr. John said. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try. So, I started with small steps. I said hello to people in English. I ordered food in English whenever I had the chance. I joined an online English learning group and typed short messages. At first, I made a lot of mistakes, but something amazing happened. Nobody laughed at me. People were kind and happy to help. The more I practiced, the more I started enjoying English. It was no longer something scary. It was something exciting. I started looking forward to learning new words and using them in conversations. I still made mistakes, but they didn't make me feel bad anymore. Instead of thinking, I am terrible at English, I thought, this mistake is helping me learn. One day, I was having a conversation with a new friend. We talked for 5 minutes completely in English. When the conversation ended, I realized something. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't thinking about my mistakes. I was just enjoying the conversation. That was the moment I knew I had changed. I was no longer the person who said, I can't. I had become the person who said, I can and I will. And that change in my mindset made all the difference. After weeks of practicing with a positive mindset, I started noticing something incredible. English no longer felt like a big, impossible challenge. It started feeling like a fun journey, and every small improvement felt like a victory. At first, my progress was slow, but I reminded myself, every day I am getting better. I kept practicing, speaking, and learning, even when I felt tired or discouraged. And then, something amazing happened. I started gaining confidence. One day I was at a cafe and a foreign tourist walked in. He looked around and seemed confused. Before, I would have stayed quiet, too nervous to say anything. But this time, I remembered my new mindset. I can do this. I walked up to him and said, "Do you need help?" He smiled and said, "Yes, I'm looking for the nearest train station." At that moment, I felt my heart race. This was my chance to test my progress. I took a deep breath and responded, "The train station is 5 minutes away. You go straight and turn left." The man understood me immediately. He thanked me and walked away. I stood there for a moment, feeling a huge wave of happiness. I had just helped someone using English. That small conversation changed everything for me. It proved that I was improving. It showed me that my English was working, even if it wasn't perfect. After that experience, I started speaking more. I no longer avoided conversations. Instead, I looked for opportunities to use my English. I started asking questions in my English class. I spoke with my classmates in English, even if I made mistakes. I ordered food at restaurants in English without fear. I joined an online English learning group and had short voice conversations with other learners. The best part: people started understanding me more easily. Before, when I spoke, I felt like people were confused. But now, I noticed that they nodded, responded quickly, and didn't ask me to repeat myself as often. I realized that confidence made a big difference. When I spoke with fear, my voice was weak, and I hesitated a lot. But when I believed in myself, my words became clearer, and my sentences flowed better. One evening, I sat down and thought about my journey. A few months ago, I was stuck in a cycle of negative thoughts. I can't learn English. I always make mistakes. I will never improve. And because of those thoughts, I was too scared to try, so I didn't improve. But when I changed my thinking, everything changed. I am learning every day. Mistakes are part of progress. I will get better if I keep going. And because of these thoughts, I practiced more. I spoke more. And I improved faster. I finally understood what Mr. John was trying to teach me. The problem was never my English skills. It was my mindset. The moment I believed in myself, everything became easier. One day I stayed after class and went to talk to Mr. John. "Teacher," I said, smiling, "you were right." He raised an eyebrow. Right about what? Positive thinking. It really works. I feel more confident, and my English is improving faster than before. He laughed and patted my shoulder. I told you. Your brain listens to your words. If you tell yourself you can't do something, you won't try. But if you tell yourself you can, you will find a way. I nodded, feeling grateful. He had given me the most important lesson, not just about English, but about life. Our thoughts shape our reality. When we believe in ourselves, we achieve more than we ever thought possible. Thinking about my past struggles, I felt proud. I remembered the days when I was too scared to speak, the times I avoided conversations, and the moments when I wanted to give up. But now, everything was different. I was speaking with confidence. I was making fewer mistakes. I was enjoying learning English. And most importantly, I had learned how to believe in myself. My journey wasn't over. I still had a lot to learn. But now, I knew that with the right mindset, nothing was impossible. So, my friends, after everything I have been through, I want to share the most important lesson I learned. Believe in yourself. I know how it feels to struggle with English. I know the frustration of forgetting words, the embarrassment of making mistakes, and the fear of speaking in front of others. I have been there. But I also know that when you change your thoughts, everything becomes easier. At the beginning of my journey, I was my own biggest enemy. I told myself, I can't do this. English is too hard. And because of that, I felt stuck. But when I changed my thinking, everything started improving. Instead of saying, I can't, I started saying, I can learn. I am improving every day. And you know what? My brain started believing it. I stopped being afraid of making mistakes. I started practicing more. I became more confident, and my English improved faster than ever before. That's the secret. Your thoughts shape your reality. If you believe in yourself, you will find a way to succeed. But if you doubt yourself, you will hold yourself back. I want you to remember something very important. There is nothing special about me. I am not a genius. I don't have any magic ability. I am just like you. The only thing I did was change the way I thought about learning. I made mistakes, but I didn't let them stop me. I felt nervous, but I didn't let fear control me. I had days when I wanted to give up, but I kept going. And because of that, I succeeded. And if I can do it, so can you. So, my friends, today is the day you take control of your learning. Today is the day you stop saying, I can't, and start saying, I can. If you make a mistake, don't feel bad. Learn from it. If you feel nervous, take a deep breath and try anyway. If English feels difficult, remember that every day you are getting better. Keep going. Keep believing in yourself. And one day, you will look back and realize how far you have come. Because success starts in your mind. And when you think positively, anything is possible. I hope my story has shown you that you can achieve anything you set your mind to. Never doubt yourself. Never give up. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing. Because your success in English and in life starts with you.